Three,
Here we go.
A
Your
two,
hands are cold.
Yours are warm.
One. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Download Youth Ministry podcast. Doug Fields here with Josh Griffin.
Hello.
And, of course, the queen, Katrina Katie Edwards.
There she is.
We have her back from Africa. It feels like it's been a little bit while since three of us been
no kidding.
together.
It's great to
It's
see
hard
you.
to get our schedules aligned.
Yeah, ours is pretty easy, but Katie's kind of a big deal.
That's the new
it.
thing.
So,
It's now
You
just
guys are
whenever
jet
Katie's
setters.
available,
we do a show. Or two.
yeah.
You guys are jet setting all over.
Not true.
Yes.
Yeah, Josh has to keep up his youth ministry T-shirt collection. So
I do.
He has to go speak at
Right.
youth, D-Nows and
Yep, that's what I
youth
do.
events and
Yeah, it's fun.
You can be choosy, but he can't, basically.
That's
he
kind
could
of
be-
true.
he could be
I'll
choosy.
be
He
in
just-
Lexington, Kentucky this week, and in a couple weeks in Racine, Wisconsin. There you go.
Oh, you're like seeing the real America.
Yeah.
Real America.
Josh,
I was in Iowa
takes
last
those
week.
good gigs.
Hurt people, hurt people.
No, they are good gigs.
Talk about jet setting.
If there's youth workers there, they're
That's
good
right.
gigs.
That's right.
true.
You were in Africa. How was that?
Yes. So great. I mean, it's just one of my favorite things of the year, truly. Like, I just love leading kids into that space.
It's great.
It's so cool. So, I mean, sometimes as my role changes at the church, and, different pieces of leadership, it's like the one thing I keep hanging on to because I love it so much. So
That's
yeah.
awesome.
How many trips have you taken?
To Africa.
Yeah.
You got to be double digits.
Pretty much
by
every
now.
year since the year 2000. So
wow.
it's,
Oh, yeah.
in the
Crushed it.
20s-ish.
Taking
So
kids all the time.
mostly, there's a couple times I've gone just on my own. But yeah, mostly taking students.
Yeah,
It's
and you
just
got to take
such a cool
Josh's
space.
daughter on this trip.
That's
right?
why it's a loaded question because I
Yes.
know exactly how the trip was. It was awesome.
I mean, for Josh, for Alexis, his daughter.
I'm not
Oh,
sure. I
said
think
For
her
my
name.
daughter.
Shoot,
Josh
sorry.
calls them numbers. They're
I
numbers.
know.
Number
I'm
3.
so sorry.
No, Alexis, continue.
She just, on this trip, oh man, it was awesome. She
Really? Did
grew
she
so
come
much
alive?
from day one. She was just a little bit in her shell. And then at the end, just little kids were drawn to her. People were drawn to her. It was.
She's a good kid. It was interesting as a parent, not on the trip, watching her literally like grow up in front of your eyes. It was pretty great.
Yeah, she was awesome. It was cool. It was just such a cool trip. So
That's great.
And I think for junior high especially, they're a little bit more fearless than the high schoolers even. So I think, we take junior high and high school on this trip together and they just have this really cool relationship with each other. Junior hires bring this energy to high school and high school kind of brings, raises the bar a little bit for the junior high.
Love
So I don't know. I love that part of it too. So
That's great. That's
yeah.
great. Well, and did you see some street children while you were there?
We did.
And the reason I
yes.
say that is because April 12th is International Street Children Day.
That's right.
And so we have something that youth workers can get a curriculum if they want to teach on it. And it's,
Oh, that's so
and
cool.
it's focused on Kenya.
Oh, that's
yeah, street
awesome.
children in Kenya. So
Yeah.
you can get it at DYM. I think it's free.
Cool. There you go. I love it.
That's super
great.
cool.
If you want to teach on
And you should.
what's happening around with street children around the world.
I like it.
Yeah. And maybe educate yourself on what's happening in your backyard too, of where kids can connect to that
Exactly.
issue, in your community too.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
cool.
That's great.
I love that.
Well, this is episode 349, and we are grateful for the sponsorship of Orange and for Leader Treks and the fact that Josh just was able to get.
Look at that. If you're watching on video, we were looking at a beautiful cityscape for a moment.
Yeah, way to
Which fall,
do tech service as
Like we've
we're
been whisked away.
recording.
We're airplaying our podcast logo to the TV behind us, and it's back.
That's good. Why did it switch to the?
I don't know. I think Allison probably did something.
Oh.
Producer Allison. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we're back. That's the best part.
Yeah, and-
Now there's only 3 of us here today.
Yeah.
In the past we've always had 4
Yeah,
on the show.
last episode was McGill.
Yeah.
For the last couple of years, it's been Jason. I haven't talked to Jason in a few weeks.
It's been a long time. I texted him. He texted me about Star Wars something. I texted him back with an answer, and then I said, "Hey, are we still friends?" with 5 question marks and a smiley face.
No
No
response.
reply. Ooh. And I think I think we're good. But that was a little
Of
disconcerting.
course you are.
I know.
He wrote a
the
very
most
nice
wonderful.
text or email about Allison's engagement. and
Yes.
I was looped in on that anyway.
That's
Wasn't
great.
it all of us?
Yeah.
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 That's great.
That was so sweet.
So, yeah, well, he's a senior pastor. He's super busy.
Yeah, talk about big jet setting.
He makes us look like we don't do anything.
Yeah.
It's true. He's either in Israel or golfing, one or the other.
I actually thought
Walking
today,
with Jesus, he says.
I never want to be a senior pastor. Like,
You realize that today?
Well, I think I've known it most of my life,
Oh,
but
yeah.
just thinking about all the things, I don't want to do that.
No way. Not
Well,
a chance.
Then let's talk about. I'm going to use that as a transition from.
Oh.
I was going to do the other one, but we'll do
We're
senior.
going to talk about
pastors.
senior pastors
Yeah,
today? I like
yeah.
it.
We're going to try something new, Katie. So
I'm excited.
Here's the deal. We're just going to take one topic for this show.
Okay.
Okay, one topic.
Are we going to just riff on it? Or do you have
Senior
questions?
pastor?
How does it
Well,
go?
we've got two questions. One,
Does Katie want to be a senior pastor? That's the real question.
one from
No.
Steve Cullum, who
Okay.
says, "Hey DYM team, Steve Cullum here, gold member DYM 100, 200 alumni, legend, etc." It means he's hosting
everything.
our
Yeah.
National Day of Volunteer Youth Ministry training.
He's deeply in right now.
Yeah, and if you're not signed up for that, go to trainmyvolunteers.com.
Yeah, you can either host it or just participate. Inexpensive, unbelievable training day. Don't miss it.
That's right. And Katie's a part of it.
Oh, I'm so excited.
It's great.
Yeah.
You did a
You know,
great job.
we have
that was awesome. The studio and the
Over
lights. That was fun.
230 locations right now. I hope we get to 300. That would be awesome.
The content is phenomenal.
It is.
Like,
It is really
I'm
strong.
so excited for volunteers to participate.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
And we're 6 months out, and we've got over 5,000 people registered.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, and it's rolling. Every day they're coming in going, I'm going to be in Oklahoma. I'm going to be in South Dakota, whatever.
So
it's
fun.
wild.
That's going to get
Anyway.
them
Racine,
done.
Wisconsin.
You guys need to have people take a picture of all their locations
Oh,
and
that's
then
fun.
put it together in like a Tiley DYM picture. You know
I
what I
like
mean?
it.
Or something like that.
Tiley? Is that a word? Tiley?
No, you know
Write
those
that
big-
idea
you
down.
know those-
I'd write it down, but I'm afraid I'd mess up the screen behind us.
You know what I'm saying though?
I do.
Those like murals of
Tiley.
everyone.
It's Tiley.
I don't know. It's lame.
So
I don't know
Steve
anything.
says,
I love it.
Steve
Just don't be a
says,
senior pastor.
how would you go about making a Tiley? No. Steve says, so we're just
So
about to
sorry,
hire a
I'm
new
so
senior
embarrassed.
pastor at our church. Current one has been here 28 years. I'm very excited about what God is doing in the next life of the church, but this is the first time I've been on staff with the church hiring a new senior pastor. So what are some suggestions to start off on the right foot with the new senior pastor? In case this helps, we have several pastors on staff. I have a small staff under me, and I report to someone on the senior leadership team who's not the senior pastor. So
you
that's Steve. Then Justin Curl writes, hey guys, Justin Curl here, winner of 3 blind dates at the first DYM 100.
Yeah, we know
Still
Justin
looking
really
for that
well.
lucky lady.
Is he still single?
He says still looking for that lucky lady.
Oh,
Looking.
man.
Yeah,
Still
I've been
looking.
at a downriver church in Detroit for a little over 5 years now.
Wow.
He says, I'm going to post this on the Facebook group, but would love to hear from all of you. Our senior pastor of 28 years. Oh, look at that.
Same
28
sames.
and 28. Just
weird.
announced his resignation.
Okay.
And our discipleship pastor of 2 years is about to announce his too. Both are leaving on great terms. As bummed as I am to have them leave, I'm excited about the future. But I'm concerned about my future here. What can I brace myself for with the new senior pastor? I love my church a lot. So we just had 2 senior pastors. I thought, let's do a senior pastor show.
That's fun.
So
I like it.
Everything, we're just going to talk senior pastors.
Everything we
We're
know
gonna
about
take-
senior pastors.
Well, here's some categories.
Okay.
One, we just lost the show again.
Oh,
Josh.
my goodness. I quit.
Yeah.
You're doing a
Never
great
again.
job.
Never again.
Yeah. Maybe for the next show, let's grab your computer.
Yeah, I guess.
Do you have it?
It's in the car.
Okay. I've got to go to the bathroom, so when I go to the bathroom, you
Oh,
grab
that'd
your
be
computer.
perfect.
Then we can.
You know what people love about this show? We're just hanging out.
Yeah.
We're just hanging
Just
out.
hanging
We're
out,
just being
talking
real.
about youth ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some
I'm
categories
excited.
of senior pastor. How you support your senior pastor.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Communicate with your senior pastor.
Communicate with.
What happens when your senior pastor is criticized to you?
Oh.
And then how do you lead up with your senior pastor?
Those are pretty
one.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you want to start? You just want to jump into
Let's start
wherever?
with support.
Can I ask you guys a question? Is it more common than not when a new so the church that I'm at, I've had the same senior pastor the whole time. So
Yep.
I've never been through this before. But is it more common for when a new senior pastor comes in that, like, I've heard that a staff resigns or that people kind of brace themselves for maybe changeover? Do you hear that a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I hear it both ways. I think some denominations and some people who
Right.
call themselves fellowships, that they say we're not a denomination, we're a fellowship, which is basically a different way to say
Yeah,
denomination.
smaller denomination.
But I think part of it is in some of the polity of the denomination, that when a new senior leader comes, everybody in the church resigns. I don't think it's my observation would be it's not the majority of churches.
Gotcha.
But I like the idea of, hey, I wasn't hired by you. You're inheriting me. And so you're the senior pastor. I am willing, I want to serve with you. I'm excited about this season. But I also know, let's just be real open and honest with each other as we get into these first 6 months or first year and make sure that we're compatible. I think that's fair. You know, a lot of senior
pastors. Think about though.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
when there's a new senior pastor, I think you do have to come to the realization that you're not on the chopping block, but you represent the old guard, the old way.
Yeah.
That's a big ask for the new leader to say, I want all of these people to stay. I just think it's unrealistic to think that they're all going to.
Yeah. Well, let's go to Steve's question to start here. What do you think? Senior leaders are looking for?
Yeah. In a youth pastor in particular?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go there since that's who we talk to.
Good call.
Just kind of keep
Feels right.
bringing
Know
back
our
Josh
audience.
back to the vision.
Yeah. Right,
Oh,
totally.
that
Know
youth
our
workers,
audience,
interesting. Yeah. What are they looking for in a church?
Yeah. I mean, I think, senior pastors want, definitely want a youth pastor who's passionate about youth ministry, but can also be aligned with the overall church vision. So I think, really understanding overall where he's headed and then aligning the youth ministry to that space. I think for us, that's worked obviously really, really well in a way that we feel aligned with the overall church vision, but we're also really passionate about where we're fleshing that out.
Yeah. And I would say senior pastors are looking for someone who's capable. Like, it's not that the youth ministry is out of sight, out of mind, but it kind of is. And I think they're looking for someone who can run with it and lead it and handle it well, and someone who's mature enough and has a strong philosophy, like someone who's capable of handling the teenagers of our church. Because if he or she as a senior leader has to now go back into the youth ministry and help that, then why have we hired you? We hired you to be capable in this area. So I think having a defined philosophy of ministry, knowing who you are and your style, being able to develop adult leaders, those are all signs of someone who is capable in that area. And I think that's what they're looking for. How about you? What do you think, Doug?
I don't know. I've never been a senior pastor, but I think they're looking for initiative. Like kind of what you're saying, Josh, is like I'd love for you to take initiative to get the background on.
I asked Ben to fix it.
No, every time it
Ben
goes
couldn't
off,
do
I
it.
just think.
I called in producer Ben.
Why don't we just turn off the TV and have a black screen, and that way we don't have to.
Can we just put an episode of like Parks and Rec behind us or something?
That sounds great.
Have The Office
Can
playing
we
in the
just have The
background.
Office playing in the
Stream some
background?
Netflix, something.
That might not
What do
be
you
a
think?
bad idea for a
I choose the surplus. Just put that on.
Season 8, episode 8, best one. All right, here we go.
I'd say that looking for initiative. That I do. Part of my pet peeve with senior leaders is what you just said, Josh. Like we hire them. I hired you to do the job, and then they go on to their next thing.
Right, they move on.
And I think we have all encountered so many youth workers who are like, yeah, you did hire for me, but don't leave me drowning alone. I mean, give me some attention, give me some feedback, some coaching, some help. And I realize senior leaders are super busy, but I tell all you can't teach initiative. I mean, people I think you can encourage it.
Yep.
But I tell young leaders, you just take the lead. Don't wait for them to tell you what to do. Just start making things happen.
Right.
You may step on feet, you may move in the wrong direction, but then you'll get some attention that way. I mean, but just if you're always just waiting for them to tell you what to do, you're not very valuable to that senior leader.
And I feel like I'd rather get in a little bit of trouble or create a little bit of tension, taking some big swings and trying and moving, as opposed to getting in trouble from the senior leader going, why aren't you doing anything? What's going on? What's happening with our youth ministry? Why is go attempt and get your hand slapped as opposed to sit around waiting for that attention.
Well, and there's ways to take initiative while also being inclusive. So you can, even with your senior leader, like, hey, I'm rolling with this. Here's kind of the direction I'm going. Just letting you know, So there's, a heads up or an inclusiveness to that, but it's also stating that I'm taking initiative. So I think sometimes along the way you can kind of leave some breadcrumbs for your senior leader that includes them in the process.
Yeah, I didn't know that was coming. Well, actually, I did email you before we launched this thing and
or
before.
Text, whatever. But I think you can bring them along with you in the initiative process. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think the bigger a decision is that you're making, the more communication needs to happen. So if an example would be, we're changing youth group night from Sunday night to Wednesday night. That is a humongous decision, and you need to prepare your senior leadership, communicate incredibly well of a large decision like that. If a decision is we're going to go and have an activity once a month instead of every 2 months, whatever. Those smaller decisions aren't nearly as big. I think know that the scale and the weight and the impact of your decision has a direct correlation to how much you communicate with your senior leader as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the principles is I don't think senior leaders like to be caught off guard or surprised.
I was just thinking that.
And a lot of people in the church, if they're disappointed with a youth worker, they won't go to you. They'll just catch the senior pastor somewhere. And if the senior pastor is, hey, we did this on Wednesday night, and, pastor, it's going to create, I know there's some parents that are ticked. Here's how I am going to resolve the issue. I've taken these 3 steps. I just want to let you know in case somebody comes to you.
A heads up email.
Yeah. That way, if you're working for a good senior pastor, they want to support you. And so when that parent comes to you, they can say, no, I've already heard about it. And, Doug's taken steps to, bring reconciliation to the issue. But, they don't like to be caught off guard.
Well, I think that is a great example of just being a great team player with your senior pastor, of just, as things arise, just, hey, I'm on your team and I want you to be on my team. And, those are the ways that we can kind of, support each other.
Yeah. No, I think the times I've gotten in the most trouble in youth ministry is when the senior pastor got blindsided. People didn't come to me with their issue. They didn't. They would go to him in this case. And I got destroyed. And it could have been prevented with a little bit better communication, a little bit more of a heads up. And if I'm honest with you, though, the senior pastor and I didn't have a great relationship. And so part of it was that tension. I kind of withdrew from that, going, well, I'm just not, it'll be fine. And it isn't fine. You get in big trouble. And then that lack of communication amplifies the pain and hurt and drama. So, yeah, stuff with senior leadership typically will snowball into bigger problems if you don't address it when it's small.
Your first church out of Bible
college,
tough. Was that Wisconsin?
Michigan.
Michigan.
It was tough, yeah. 2 years in, senior pastor and I, not friends, not in. Now, I would say this. I've never gone through a pastoral transition of a senior pastor to another senior pastor. But I would say this. Senior pastors do change in the course of their tenure. So even if you serve for the same one for 12 years, they change, their personalities change, their life stages change. There's a lot of transition, even if the person is the same. So true. My first weekend in Michigan, the senior pastor's daughter was killed in a car accident. And so he changed. And I barely knew him because I just started. But he changed and was never the same. And so that obviously started us off on a really rocky path. He was gone for a while and then didn't really know how to grieve through it all. And it was tough.
Well, and you were 22.
Oh, so green.
You didn't
made
know
every mistake. I have a business management degree and a Bible degree, so I have no youth ministry. My only training was some youth ministry books. One written by you, Doug, which was great, Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry, but had nothing. And so I was super green, failing at every turn, and now filling the pulpit on Sunday mornings because the pastor's gone.
Wow.
And dealing with a really, really strained relationship. And it was just him and I and a secretary. So it wasn't like we can all lean into the team. Yeah, there's none of that. It's you. It's on you.
Yeah.
So I would just say, from experience, I know the pain of a tough senior pastor relationship. And I also know the seasons of the same senior pastor going through a bunch of different seasons in his life. So yeah, it's not easy.
That's why, I haven't really thought about that, of just the same senior pastor just evolving over time. And there's times where we, in our minds, think they're this, in this season, but allowing them to grow and evolve, like we hope they will allow us to do the same.
Precisely. But think about it. I mean, when I started in Michigan, his kids were in junior high. Halfway through, they're in high school. And by the time I'm in my last couple years there, they're graduating high school, and he's now an empty nester. Those are some really big changes in his philosophy of ministry, in his perspective on youth ministry. So I would say I lived several lives of youth ministry in that 8 years. And a couple years in, it got so bad that I even quit. So I just said, I'm done, and it was over. And it was a really cool God moment where the senior pastor and God healed that relationship. It was never to the point where we were like skipping through the flowers together and going to ball games and like laughing and giggling like old friends. It wasn't. But God healed it.
Is that how you pictured
Oh, yeah.
it? Was that your expectation?
Oh, like this, like, oh my goodness, did you see that? Like you're at a ball game, you're spilling peanuts everywhere. It's the best.
What does your giggle sound like?
The skipping through the flower fields. I just never.
Come on. But I would say this: God never allowed us to be super best buds, close. Yeah. But we worked together for 6 more years, same church after I quit, and God did some pretty cool healing in that too. So cool. I would say if there's a youth worker out there who's listening to this who is at their wits' end, they're done, they have their resignation written, etc. I would say be careful to not resign in your timing, but really listen to God's Spirit, because my timing would rear its head way too often. Yeah, like I'm done. Good.
Well, and
I'm going to wound them with this.
When new senior pastors, that's a couple of our questions related to new senior pastors come in. They're also coming in with their. They need to make their mark and their statement and be who they are and lead the church the way that, they felt a calling to go there, or somebody in your church, the elders or the search committee felt like this is the right person. They've got to find their footing as well.
Yeah, totally.
So there are going to be some changes. We're dealing with, our a couple buddies who were in youth ministry, and there's a new senior pastor, and the new senior pastor's got leadership off the charts, and he's making imposing some decisions on our youth ministry friends, and I think they're good decisions, honestly, but they feel like I'm being told what to do.
I used to be able to lead this, and now you're telling me how to lead. Like what? Yeah. That's tough.
Even if they're the right decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, sometimes it's hard when you have a senior pastor that loves youth ministry too, and has.
You almost want one that doesn't. Do your thing. You're like, okay, I will.
If they get it and they love it, then they want to put energy towards it, and so I imagine that's tricky.
I would say if you're going to go out for lunch with this potentially, Steve and Justin that wrote in, I would say if you're going to go out to lunch with your new senior leader or the guy or gal who's about the one to come in or whatever, I would say just think of it in two halves. The first half would be, here's what we're doing in our youth ministry. Here's the history. Here's where we've been. Here's the stories. Like, get them up to speed. And then the second half of the lunch, pivot it into, tell me your philosophy. Tell me what you envision for the ministry. Like, help them understand the context of where you've been and appreciate that. But then open the door to them telling us where this church is going. I think that would be a really informative history lesson for them to get a fuller perspective, and would also be a really great segue to go, I'm going to follow your lead, so tell me where you want us to go.
Yeah, that's good. What about, let's talk about ideas under support. How do you support your senior pastor?
Yeah, I think communication has already come up multiple times. That's a for sure.
Well, I think care is a part of support.
Yep.
I think what I've realized about senior leadership in general is just that it just seems as if there's very few people asking, how are you, really? Or how can I pray for you? Or noticing things, and, something as simple as writing a note or even shooting a text about, I really appreciated your sermon today. This is what I love the most. I think just care. It seems like as you rise up in an organization, it seems like people think you need care less, maybe, or you need encouragement less.
Yeah, or you don't need anything.
Or you don't need anything at all.
Your job is to give everything down to me.
Everything's just to trickle down. Yeah. And man, I think the burden that our senior pastor carries is just weighty and huge, and I don't get it most of the time. And so if there's, I think being in prayer for your senior pastor daily, is huge. A huge way to support. They might never know or see it, but
and
it's
let
just
him or her
huge.
know that too.
Totally, for sure.
Well, think of what it does for your heart when you're praying for them. You think this is about them, but it's also softening your heart to that email that you get or that blind or whatever, because you've been praying for them, and so this is your friend, this is your co-laborer.
I
like
think
that.
the look on their face when you ask that question, how are you really? Like, how are you?
Yeah.
In just kind of that term, there's just most of the time people are approaching, I think, senior pastor with requests or needs or demands. So to be someone who's different in that lane, that keep your requests maybe for email, but in person, be personable and be warm and how are you? And I think that's huge.
Yeah. Well, just know that with your senior pastor, everybody wants something from him.
Yeah.
Everybody wants something from him. So if you're that person that's always needy and wanting something from them, if I'm the senior pastor, I'm kind of hiding from you at times because I'm like, oh gosh, every time we talk, it's a 30-minute.
It's another person who has more access than everybody else, and they still, all they want is more of me.
Yeah. And I can remember, I'm sure Kay would be okay with us sharing this. I can remember a time, I can't even remember how this came about, but I think there was a season where Kay Warren, senior pastor's wife, thought Kathy didn't like her or something like that. I can't remember exactly how the story went, but it was just when it came down to it, it was like, you never ask anything of me. And,
that's awesome.
And it wasn't, Kathy loves her and loved her, but it was just that she wasn't asking of her and everybody else was asking of her.
Yeah, she knows she's wanted and needed and loved because people are asking her for stuff.
Yeah, because I just think when you're in that senior role, like everybody's got an agenda, they want, so anytime you can show support. It's things I just did this the other night. I was speaking at a marriage event on a Friday and Saturday, and they wanted the senior pastor to be there to welcome. And we were at this church that was hosting 20 other churches. So the senior pastor of the hosting church to be there and welcome everyone.
Right.
And I'm friends with his assistant, and so I knew Friday was his day off. And I just pinged her and I said, hey, tell him not to, it's his day off. Yeah. He doesn't need to be there just because, the organization that I'm speaking for wants him to be there.
Right.
The event will go on without him.
Just fine.
We can welcome.
Yeah, we can welcome the whole bit. And so, I would do that with Rick all the time. Just say, I would invite and then uninvite.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want you to know we're doing this big volunteer, year kickoff. Would love for you to be there. I just want you to know that because if you were there, it would be better. Everything's better when you're there.
Of course.
But I also want to let you know that you don't need to be there.
Right.
Don't be there.
Yeah. If you're in, great, but don't make any.
Invite, but then uninvite.
Yeah, because the reality is they don't need to be at another thing.
Yeah.
Then you save your I was going to say your bullets. That's just not a good illustration.
But
anymore. You save your
big ass
coins.
Your coins.
your coins.
Your big ass coins.
Chips. Your chips. Your Cheetos.
You save your chips.
Save your chips.
You save your chips when you really need it. Hey, I know the last 2 years I've uninvited you everything. This is one that would be be super powerful. Yeah. We're going through this change. It'd be great to have your endorsement on there. But I just think, to be a senior leader is everybody is just always has an agenda for your life. And so to support him or her by, giving them an out, to communicate clearly with them, I think to speak highly behind their back.
Yeah.
So, I know that when I was at Saddleback for so many years, people would always say, oh, we love your preaching. Well, it's because they didn't hear it very often.
It was 30 minutes instead of 40.
Well, no,
50.
It was a youth message that I just, redid. And so, instead of, it should be good.
Yeah.
I've already done it before. And
better be good.
But, for me to say, well, I'm glad you liked it, but, Pastor does this every single week. I could never do, what he does So talking highly behind their back is also, it gets back to him. And it's a way to support your leader.
Yeah. I think too, just in that lane of just also, there's times where people are like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Pastor's making this decision. And I'm like, I know, but history's shown us that we can trust him. We can trust his leadership. Yep. So let's lean into that trust right now. We might not see everything or the full picture. So I think even helping people in the panic, which is usually where things get stirred up or when people don't know
the drama,
the whole picture, the full story. And most of the time we do not.
Yeah.
And so when big decisions are made or things like that, those are great times to stand in that. And if you yourself have questions, to offline ask those questions and understand more when you need to, but with people, just stand into that trust, lean into that. I think that goes a long way too.
Yeah, I think at times I haven't appreciated the weight of the senior leader position. Like in my young arrogance as a youth worker, I would never say it out loud, but I would think like I could run this church, or that it doesn't look that hard. Yeah. Like why would he make that decision? That's a dumb decision. Like I would make the opposite of that. Kind of flippantly, arrogantly, like I could do the senior pastor job. Now, 20 plus years later, I go, I don't want it.
You're like, Lord, please don't make me run this church.
Exactly. But you also don't want to tell God that you don't want to do something, because then he makes you do that usually. So anyhow, I would say appreciating the weight of that role, that mantle, that responsibility, the spiritual weight of the church. The pastor, as you know, is held accountable for his, it's a big heavy deal. It's really heavy. And I think early in youth ministry, I felt like I had enough perspective to make those calls, and I didn't. And I felt like I had enough wisdom to be that leader, and I didn't and don't. And so if a young youth worker is listening in particular, I would say just check some of that ego, because you aren't God's gift to the church. You're a broken, fallible human being, just like the man or woman that you're serving alongside.
Yeah. So. Well, and if you're not going to be that person, you will become that person eventually.
Yes.
Because you're going to eat some humble pie. Right. I can't tell you how many people over the years, when I was at Saddleback, would say, I don't like the way Rick's, I don't think this is,
something.
And then they go out and they start their own church and they fail miserably. They're like, maybe he did it, I mean, I can't tell you how many times people thought that Saddleback was doing it wrong, and they went out to start their own and
they realized maybe it's okay.
Okay, let's end with one tip. I'll start. Okay. One tip. I would say ask if you can take something off your senior pastor's plate.
That's a gift.
Okay? Yep. Because when I was always in the midst of camp or mission trips or something, when I'm going crazy and I hear people like out laughing in the cubicles or whatever, like, oh God, if somebody could just help me, it's going to take me more time right now to figure out how to just coming in. Even if I say no, like you don't have anything, at least I sense that you care that I'm overloaded right now. Yeah. And there may be times I remember saying to Pastor Rick, hey, I know that you preach all day Sunday, and then you go to this membership class and you teach for an hour. And I remember the first membership class I went to, when he was there, he was so tired. Like during dinner break, he sat by himself and just
closed his
chicken.
Eyes.
Yeah, basically. And it was a long day with a lot of people. And so I said, hey, can I teach that? Take that hour from you, and it worked out to be strategic for me, because I used it to recruit volunteers.
Yeah. Oh, it's really good. I don't think I did that nearly enough, asking what I can take off their plate.
Yeah.
Because my plate's already full, but what a good move.
Yep.
What a long-term play, too, for that relationship. I'll go next, if that's okay. I would say treat the senior pastor's kids great. Yep. Love them, take care of them, give them discount. Being a PK is tough enough, and there could potentially be some natural tension or rivalry. Get rid of all that. Smack all that in the teeth. Love those kids. They need you, really. And they're just under a weird scrutiny and pressure, and the whole fishbowl thing, being that visible, and they're a reflection of somebody all the time, and let them be them around you. Yep. Treat them great. Spoil them. Give them perks that only they get. I just think it's a great way to love your senior leadership, by taking care of their kids.
It's good.
If applicable.
Or their grandkids.
Or their grandkids, that's right.
I would just say get to know your senior pastor if you can. Know what they care about, know what they don't care about, know how they're wired. I just think, like, one of the things that I've learned in leading up with leadership is just getting to know my leader and just how they're wired and how they work. I think it makes my job easier, and it helps me help them in all sorts of ways. It helps me support, encourage. It helps me know where I can take initiative, and it speaks volumes to them. So I think sometimes with our seniors, or senior pastors, or senior leaderships, we're intimidated, and we just feel like they're the boss and they're this. But I just think there's so many, if you learn where they love to eat lunch and some of those things, just build a relationship with them, build some bridges.
I mean, it kind of feels huge. Right. Like, build a relationship, of course, but we don't. Or we tried once and it didn't go well, and so we decided, well, I'm done, Or senior leaders sometimes have built up walls and they've insulated themselves because they're in such demand.
Yeah.
I love that principle.
And we've had
Fight through it.
6 youth pastors in the last 7 years.
Right.
So you're not going to last that long
Yeah.
anyway. So why get to know you?
Yes, exactly.
Well,
I love that principle.
I
Good.
think too, like with leaders, I think because people are coming to them for business and for stuff.
Yeah.
If you can secure a half-hour coffee or something, like, hey, we're actually not going to talk about church. Like, let's just spend some time together. It could be like a refreshing change of pace from the grind of meetings that he has that day. So
I like it.
I don't know.
It's good.
I like it.
Yeah.
Good.
Really
Okay,
good.
we're
Fun
going to
show. I
call
like
that
that. That's fun.
Senior Pastor Show,
right.
episode 349.
And Justin and Steve, blessings on your guys' church as you
know.
transition a longtime pastor out and find the next person.
Yeah, let us know how that's
That's a
going.
big
Also,
Please do.
send any questions that you have to podcast@downloadyouthministry.com. That's podcast@downloadyouthministry.com.
There you go. Thank you to our great sponsors at Orange and
Leader Tracks
and all those other great sponsors that we don't have on the screen
And
today.
all
There it is.
Because
Just 2 anyway.
the screen's dark
and the
right now.
things. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
like it. It was a good
great.
show. It was fun.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. And the end.
Goodbye.